Have you ever been to a show and thought to yourself, holy, this band is tight. How the f do they sound this good? And you notice there's 4 guitars, 2 harmonized leads, and only 1 guitar player on stage. And you realize it's because of their not so secret weapon, backing tracks.
On a Monday, I am waiting. Tuesday.
I've seen it. I know you've probably seen it too. And while it's tempting to throw a blanket over the whole thing and just call it all cheating, it's not that simple. The reality is that there's hundreds of different reasons for why a band might choose to use backing tracks, and they don't all involve the band being lazy or pulling a Milli Vanilli on the audience. As an obvious example, you can't expect a band to bring out a violin player for one part on one song. Or maybe they'd love to bring out another guitar player, but it's just not financially viable with the cost of touring these days. And beyond all that, the reality is that using backing tracks makes it harder, not easier, to play your show. Any moment you're synced to a pre-recorded track, your margin for error goes away. If you get off for even a few beats in a measure, your show is potentially screwed. With all that being said, there are absolutely times where using backing tracks live is cheating. So to answer the question in the title of this video, are backing tracks cheating? Sometimes. It's nuanced. And as someone who just did a 30-day European tour where we did use tracks, I think it's important for you to understand those nuances so you can make an informed opinion and decide for yourself. That's right. I want you to think for yourself. Real quick, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Eyal Levi, CEO of URM Academy. I've been a producer and a guitarist in my band Doth since 1999 and have been playing way longer than that. First, let's be clear about what we're even talking about. A backing track is simply any pre-recorded audio that plays in sync with a live band. A super common example is when you hear a huge vocal harmony kick in, but there's only one person on stage with a mic. Those extra voices, those are backing tracks. The biggest and most legitimate reason for using tracks is to recreate the album experience for fans. Think about how modern metal records are made. We see this all the time. Sessions packed with dozens, sometimes hundreds of tracks. Some of the most intensive mixes out there include over 300 layers. A huge part of that sound comes from stacking synths, sound design, and orchestral elements right into the core of the arrangement. And these aren't just decorative additions. They're built into the DNA of the song from the beginning. The songs are built with those layers in mind. So what's a band supposed to do live? Say you're a 4-piece metal band with a traditional lineup, guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and you have one song with a synth line or a keyboard part that really defines the chorus. It's super, super important to the song, but you don't have a keyboard player. So what are your options? Well, you could just not play that part. That's definitely an option, but if you as the artist feel like that part's integral to the song, well, you're just presenting a watered down version of your art. Another option is you could just rearrange the song and have somebody else play that part, like a guitar player. And that can actually work great if you have 2 guitars in the band. But what if you're a 1-guitar band? What happens to the guitar line that we're supposed to be playing? Do you just omit it? Or what if the guitar version of that synth line is just way too technical and crazy to actually realistically play on guitar? Lots of these synth lines have all kinds of weird octave jumps and crazy intervals that are just not realistic for guitar. What then? Now, someone will inevitably say, well, why don't they just trigger it with a MIDI pedal or a sample pad? And sometimes that can also work, but asking the guitarist or another musician to suddenly become a one-man band and start tap dancing on pedals to trigger samples while also nailing a complex riff or bass line is unrealistic. It just doesn't work for most bands. And also, what's the difference? Why does triggering a MIDI part or a sample have more validity than just using a track? This brings me to my biggest example: orchestras. A ton of metal bands, from Dimmu Borgir to Septic Flesh to Ice Nine Kills even, use heavy orchestration. But do you have any idea how insane it would be to take a full orchestra on tour? You're talking about salaries, travel, insurance, per diems, catering, and lodging for up to 100 people. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, or as I know from experience, a minimum of 15,000 euros per day. That is not a metal tour budget, that's a Hollywood movie budget. Not to mention, most clubs can barely fit the opening band's gear on stage, let alone a 100-piece orchestra. Sure, you see special events where a band performs with an orchestra. Septic Flesh have done absolute badass shows in Mexico City, and even one at the Parthenon in Athens with an orchestra. Metallica did S&M. But these are massive one-time productions. They're not financially or logistically sustainable for an entire tour. So the real question for the fans is this: when you go to see an orchestral metal band, do you want to hear the song as the artist intended with all those epic layers? Or do you want to hear an alternate rehearsal or stripped down arrangement? Which is it? For many artists, those layers are not optional. The song is not the song without them. In that context, using backing tracks to deliver the full artistic vision is not faking it. It's an intentional artistic choice. Of course, this is where we get into the stuff that really pisses some people off. We've all heard the horror stories of bands miming the guitar solos, having all their rhythm guitars on a track, or the lead vocals being mostly pre-recorded. That's the Milli Vanilli scenario people picture, where you're essentially just hearing the album played over a PA. And that version of using backing tracks absolutely sucks. That is cheating the audience. That's also why some of my favorite YouTube clips are when bands go on live TV, they're forced to lip sync, and they just fuck around the whole time and make a mockery out of it. It's because they know that misrepresenting their live performance is bullshit. But there is a massive gray area. What about a 4-piece band with one guitar player who plays both rhythm and lead, who decides to take a solo? What should happen then? Should the rhythm just drop out? I mean, some bands do write their songs that way. Look at Pantera. Dimebag's solos were specifically written so that no rhythm guitar was needed underneath them. That was their style, and it worked. But lots of bands write parts where the solo works off of the rhythm guitar part behind it. Is it cheating to have one rhythm guitar track playing during the solo so the song sounds correct? I don't think so. A great modern example is Periphery. They've toured with a backing track for their bass ever since Nolly left the band. It's their decision. They did not want to replace him. And you know what? I have never heard anyone ever accuse Periphery of cheating. No one questions their musicianship or their integrity, and that's because everyone understands that it's a conscious choice they made to preserve a certain dynamic in their band while still delivering the full sound of their records live. Now here's the part that I think the critics get absolutely wrong. It's the idea that using tracks is the easy way out, a shortcut for bands who can't hack it. The idea that using tracks is the easy way out is one of the most ignorant takes I have ever heard in my entire life. Using backing tracks correctly and consistently actually makes playing a live show harder, exponentially harder. Think about it. The second you introduce a pre-recorded element, you are chained to it. This requires, at a minimum, the drummer be playing to a click track, which means the entire band is locked to a machine. There is absolutely no room for error. If the drummer gets off the click, if the guitarist rushes a part, if the singer comes in a beat late, the whole thing can quickly become a catastrophic train wreck. You'll have the orchestral parts for the chorus blasting over the PA while the band is still playing the verse. I know exactly how terrible this is because it has happened to me on stage, and I can say it's a uniquely horrifying experience. A band that plays without a click has a natural push and pull. They can feel each other out. If someone messes up, they can make eye contact, give a cue, and seamlessly get back on track. You have zero of that flexibility when you're synced to a computer. You have to be on every single measure of every single night. And that's not even the technical part of it. You are introducing so many more points of failure into your live rig. Back in the day, people used to run tracks off iPods with the click pan to the left for the drummer and a mono backing track pan to the right for the front of house engineer. I remember the first time I ever encountered this was in this moment on the 2007 Ozfest tour. I remember thinking to myself that it was a really efficient, cool, and clever method for a band that might not be very computer savvy or recording savvy to accomplish their goal. Nowadays, it's usually a laptop running a DAW through an interface or a dedicated hardware sampler. But now you have to worry about the laptop crashing, possibly getting hit with something like a bottle, a cable coming loose, the interface bugging out, or just the software glitching out. You don't just have to learn your songs anymore, you have to become a tech expert. You have to know your entire signal chain, how to troubleshoot every piece of gear, and how to fix it in 30 seconds in the dark while a crowd is staring at you. I went through this hell myself back in the early days of this technology. Most of the time it worked, but every once in a while it would glitch and reset to its default sound, which was a completely clean DI guitar signal. There's nothing quite like being on stage in the middle of a brutal death metal song and your guitar suddenly sounds like it should be on a Radio Disney clip.
Time to time I wait and
Anyone who says that this is for people trying to get around doing work do not know what they're talking about. This is way harder, and there's levels to it. The functionality goes even further. Many bands aren't even running audible backing tracks. They're playing to a click so they can automate their guitar patch changes via MIDI. If you're a guitarist who uses a lot of different tones, a clean part, a heavy rhythm, a lead with delay, multiple different effects tones, and more, you know how much of a tap dance it can be to hit all the right pedals at the right time. Automating that frees you up to focus on your performance. But again, it locks you into the grid. If you have your rig switch to a clean part while you're supposed to be playing a heavy rhythm, It's super embarrassing and a disaster. Some musicians, like Paul Masvidal from Cynic, have tried it both ways and decided against the automated approach. He told me he felt it was too restrictive for their fluid, free-flowing style of music, and that's perfectly valid. That's an artistic choice based on experience. He's not just hating on something he doesn't understand. I've toured with them twice, and both times they had completely different setups. Both of them were super advanced and totally tweaked out. He knows what he's talking about. Something that bands do now is program entire light shows through MIDI or a light sequencer, which are synced to the click track. My band used to do this back in 2009. We brought our own lights that were synced to MIDI, which was a huge undertaking back then because the technology was so new. But now it's gotten way better, and it's a way for bands who can't afford a full-time light person to have a much better looking live show. Recently, we just toured with Rivers of Nile, and they had a whole light show with them that looked amazing. They brought the lights with them, but there was no lighting guy on the tour, which was something I had never seen on that level. And this was one of the best light shows I've seen for a club-level metal band. I know that what they did was they hired a lighting guy to help them program the show before the tour. He showed them how to use the rig on a laptop, and then they just had the laptop control the lights for the whole tour, and it looked amazing. This technology can also control LED screens or projections that are timed to the music. So there are so many benefits to this kind of system beyond just audio. All that said, are backing tracks cheating? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If a band is using them to fake the core of their performance, like a singer is lip syncing, the guitar player is not actually playing that insane solo, then yes, that's cheating. Absolutely, without a doubt. They are misrepresenting their abilities and lying to the audience. But if a band is using tracks to bring the layered, complex sound of their album to the stage, to add orchestral elements they could never afford to tour with, or to run a tighter, more professional show with synced lights and patch changes, that's not cheating. That's professionalism. It shows a dedication to the art and a commitment to giving the fans the best show possible. And frankly, it's a hell of a lot harder to do it this way. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you on the next one.